disease. It has been there very much present in our world since decades. And it has been a major cause of suffering and death since times immemorial. So there have been mentions of tuberculosis even in our Vedas, you know how old they are. And in the Vedas, tuberculosis is referred to as Raja Yakshma, which means wasting disease. Similarly, we have Hippocrates, who was the father of modern medicine. He also made mentions to tuberculosis. At that time, it was referred to as phthisis, which also means to consume or waste away. So you can see that tuberculosis is characterized by a lot of wasting of muscle, wasting of tissue. Now, I'm sure you all have touched some part of tuberculosis in microbiology. Have you? Or is it altogether new?
Ma'am covered in my.
You have, okay. Okay, that's good. So I think what I'm going to tell you now, I think you all know that Mycobacterium tuberculosis is the causative agent for tuberculosis. And this is an aerobic and acid-fast bacillus. And this acid-fast property is mainly due to its cell wall, which is rich in mycolic acid. Now we come to epidemiology of tuberculosis. So this is according to the India TB report, which we have from 2020. Basically, what is the burden of tuberculosis in the world and in our country today? So almost a quarter of the cases of tuberculosis in the whole world today come from India. So you can see India has a huge burden of TB by itself and also a huge contribution towards the world's tuberculosis. So we have two terms in which we epidemiology. First is prevalence and second is incidence. So prevalence of infection. So these are basically the number of people, number of population per lakh who have been exposed to tuberculosis, who are infected. They don't have disease, but they are infected or rather exposed to Mycobacterium tuberculosis. So as you can see, more than 40% of people in our country have been infected with tuberculosis. So prevalence of tuberculosis in our country is more than 40%. Now coming to incidence. Now incidence is the number of new cases of tuberculosis per lakh of population per year. So in our country for the year 2020, there were about 159 new detected cases of tuberculosis per lakh of population. So you see, this is a huge number, which is why tuberculosis is such an important disease in our country. Now, before we go to our clinical picture, I would like to discuss a bit about predisposing factors. Now, what is the meaning of predisposing factors? Can anyone tell me? Anyone has an idea? What are predisposing factors? What is the meaning of the term?
The factors that make an individual more susceptible to a particular disease or infection.
Yeah, okay. So predisposing factor is simply why one person is more likely to get the disease than another one. So there are certain factors which are either inherent in the person's body or certain environmental factors that that person is exposed to, because of which he or she is more likely to get the disease. So these factors are predisposing factors. So in tuberculosis, we have underlying factors or we have environmental factors. So underlying factors are mainly those that suppress the immunity of the person. So HIV infection, we know, is a very common cause of immune suppression. So if a person is infected with HIV, if the person has diabetes mellitus, if a person has any malignancy anywhere in the body, if the person is suffering from malnutrition, that is a poor what do you say, unhealthy diet, or if the person is on any immunosuppressant treatment. Corticosteroids, we all know, are common immunosuppressant drugs, and silicosis. Okay, so if the person has silicosis, then also he or she would be predisposed to developing tuberculosis. So anyone has an idea what is silicosis? It is an occupational lung disease, and as the name suggests, it is caused by exposure to silica. But what is the occupation that can predispose a person to silicosis? Can anyone tell me which is this occupation that we're talking about? Divyanshi, would you like to answer?
Glass industries.
Not really. So silicosis is basically exposure to dust of stone dust. So stone crushers, okay, laborers who are involved in at construction sites, and basic most common occupation is stone crushing. So these are the individuals who are most predisposed to developing silicosis. So silicosis is known to interfere with alveolar macrophage function, and that is how it predisposes individuals to tuberculosis. Now we come to environmental factors. So if the person is at any extreme of age, like small children or elderly, these individuals would be more likely to develop tuberculosis than a young adult. Also, if the person is living in an overcrowded place, small area, many family members, poor hygiene, they would be predisposed to developing TB. And if the person is a smoker or is abusing alcohol or intravenous drugs, then also he or she would be predisposed to tuberculosis. So now we come to mode of transmission. I think all of us know that tuberculosis is caused by the inhalational route, and it is an airborne disease. Okay, but what is it exactly that we are inhaling? So this is what you might not know. So what we are inhaling, or what the person who's getting infected is inhaling, is the droplet nuclei. Okay. Now, what is different from droplets and droplet nuclei? So droplets are usually when a person is coughing or sneezing, whatever is emitted out into the air is a droplet. These are particles of larger size. So they are roughly about 5 to 10 microns in size. Okay, but these are little heavier, so they settle down. They don't remain in the air. Now, droplet nuclei is when a large part of the moisture has evaporated from the droplet, which reduces the size and sort of concentrates those droplets, concentrates the infective material. So these are airborne particles which are smaller, that is 1 to 5 microns in diameter, and these particles remain suspended in the air. So these droplet nuclei, when inhaled, cause tuberculosis. And a source, I think we all know, whenever a person who is infected with tuberculosis is sputum positive, he or she coughs, sneezes, speaks loudly, or sings, and this sort of emits the bacteria or the infective material into the air. Any doubts up till now? Can I go on to clinical features? Okay, all right. So coming to clinical features of tuberculosis. So we can divide these clinical features into two types. First is constitutional and second is specific. So constitutional would mean generalized symptoms in the body which are not specific to any particular system. And specific symptoms would be more of systemic or respiratory specific symptoms. So first we come to constitutional symptoms. Can anyone tell me one or two constitutional symptoms before I go to the next very simple question of tuberculosis? Bhai, did you answer? Cough. Okay, so you were right about fever. Fever is a constitutional symptom, but cough is not, because cough is specific to the respiratory system. Okay, so here comes our constitutional symptoms. So our constitutional symptoms are 5. They are fever, malaise, night sweats, weight loss, and anorexia. Fever, we all know, raise in body temperature. Fever in tuberculosis usually is not very high grade. So a patient does not usually complain of fever more than 100 degrees. Like high grade fever, like 102 and above, like we see in viral fever, is definitely not a part of tuberculosis. Usually patients rise of fever. Fever may be accompanied by malaise. So malaise is a general feeling for which cannot be attributed to any particular cause. So the person can say, I'm feeling unwell and don't feel like doing anything. That is malaise. Then we can have night sweats. So what are night sweats? A person has gone to sleep and then suddenly wakes up drenched in sweat. This is called as night sweat. This is also a constitutional symptom which is seen in tuberculosis. And then we have anorexia and weight loss. Anorexia means loss of appetite. The patient typically says that kuch khane ka man nahi karta, khana dekhne ka bhi man nahi karta. So this is typically what we define as anorexia. And weight loss, the person will tell you that I have lost weight or kapde dheele ho gaye. This is how patients usually explain weight loss. Now we come to specific symptoms. So any doubt between symptoms and signs? I hope there's no doubt, because I am discussing symptoms right now. So I think all of us know that symptoms is what the patient complains of in his or her own words, and sign is what we elicit after we examine the patient. Okay, so please don't confuse between the two. What I am discussing now are constitutional and specific symptoms, or rather what the patient would complain of. So specific symptoms of tuberculosis are cough, hemopsis, shortness of breath. Cough is usually productive. In some cases, it may be dry also, but it's usually productive. Productive meaning sputum is produced, and this sputum may be mucoid or maybe mucopurulent. Mucopurulent simply means there is some thickness and yellowish discoloration to the sputum. Hemopsis is does anyone know what's hemopsis? Anyone? Bharti, tell me.
Cough with blood.
Yeah, okay. Not exactly cough with blood. It doesn't have to be preceded by cough. Hemopsis is basically presence of blood in sputum. Okay. Now, this hemopsis might be just mild, which we define as streaking of sputum. What is streaking of sputum? So, person has produced some sputum. He or she might just see a few spots of blood in it. So that is called as streaking of sputum. And it's the most minimal type of hemopsis. And they can also be massive sputum, a massive hemopsis. Now, what is massive hemopsis? The person is just coughing up large volumes of blood, pure blood. So that is called massive hemopsis. Massive hemopsis can be life-threatening as well. So hemopsis is an important symptom of tuberculosis. And then if there is extensive lung involvement in later stages, the person can also complain of breathlessness. So this is a quick revision of our symptoms. The person can have fever, fatigue or malaise, weight loss accompanied with anorexia, coughing with sputum, hemopsis, and night sweats. Okay, so after we finish this, now we have a summary of these symptoms. So if a patient comes to us in an OPD with symptoms suggestive of pulmonary tuberculosis, then what do we call it as? Is there a term that we use for this? A TB suspect, in other words. So what is there any term? There's a specific term that is used in our TB program. Anyone is aware of it? It's a slightly difficult question, but I'd just like to know if anyone knows what the term is. What is a TB suspect also called as? Does anyone know?
TB.
Sorry?
Presumptive TB case.
Yes, presumptive TB. Very good. Who is this? Please tell me your name.
Ma'am Janvi.
Thank you so much, Janvi. Very well answered. So we call it as presumptive pulmonary TB. It's a very important term. So everyone remember this word. It's called presumptive. Presumptive meaning we are presuming that the person has TB. So what is presumptive pulmonary tuberculosis? So it is basically a person who has any of the following symptoms or signs. What are these symptoms? There are 5 of them. Number 1, a person having cough for more than 2 weeks. Number 2, a person having fever for more than 2 weeks. Number 3, a person complaining of significant weight loss. Significant weight loss is loss of more than 10% of weight over 6 months. 4th is hemopsis. And 5th is any abnormality in the chest X-ray. Of course, the person will not complain of this, but yeah, if at all you get a chest X-ray and you find any abnormality, by itself, it is the patient is a case of presumptive pulmonary TB. So any one of these 5 or one or more of these would be suggestive of presumptive pulmonary tuberculosis. Once we are done with symptoms, what would we like to do? We would like to ask the patient for some history. History to figure out has he or she had any predisposing factors or, to help us in our diagnosis and management. So, of course, first thing we would do is history of presenting illness. We would like to document that. I think all of you have learned this in basic history taking. So this is nothing but elaborating on the symptoms that the patient has already mentioned to us. After we finish elaborating on this, we go to negative history. So, for example, if a patient says, I have cough with sputum since a month. After elaborating on that, we would also like to ask the patient, do you have hemopsis? Do you have breathlessness? Do you have chest pain? So if the person says, no, we do not have it, then we would write it in negative history, that no history of hemopsis, chest pain, and breathlessness. The third thing, we would like to go into the past history. We would like to know if the patient has any other past illness that would be a contributing factor, like diabetes mellitus or malignancy, as I mentioned earlier. After this, we would like to ask about treatment history of any drugs that the person is taking, like maybe immunosuppressants for any disease like maybe nephrotic syndrome or any maybe some collagen vascular disease. We would also like to ask if the patient has had any anti-tubercular treatment in the past. Likewise, we would like to know if the patient has any family history of TB, meaning any of the family members of the patient, have they had tuberculosis in the past? It would help us to know about any contact history. After this, we would also like to know if the person has any history of smoking, any history of alcohol intake, any drug abuse. And occupational history, like I told you, for silicosis, we would like to ask about the occupation. And socioeconomic history, basically just in short about the living conditions of the patient so as to rule out overcrowding. So this just gives us an idea about what could have predisposed the patient to develop tuberculosis, or if the patient is at risk for tuberculosis from our symptoms and history. So once we complete our history, we go to examination of the patient. So first thing we do is a general examination. So in general examination, what are the things that we can find in tuberculosis? We can find pallor. Pallor is a sign of, anyone? Pallor is a sign of? What does pallor
Anemia.
indicate? Yes, Janvi?
Ma'am, anemia.
Yeah, anemia. So why anemia? Because tuberculosis is a chronic disease, and you all must have learned that we can find anemia in chronic malnutrition or disease. So we can find pallor, we can find cachexia because of the malnutrition, and like I told you, tuberculosis is a disease of wasting. And we can also find clubbing of the digits. Clubbing is simply hypertrophy of the tissue of the nail bed, and this is also because of chronic disease. In some cases, extensive, when the patient has extensive disease, we may also come across increased respiratory rate. So this is a typical tuberculosis patient. You can see all his ribs are visible and clavicle and bone. So this is how a typical cachexic patient of tuberculosis would. So once we are done with general examination, we would like to examine the respiratory system of the patient, and what are we likely to observe. So respiratory system examination is largely normal. We don't have any major findings, except for if the disease is advanced with a lot of fibrosis and volume loss, then we might see some asymmetry in the chest wall and find some creps while we auscultate because of fibrosis. But in the early stages, when they're just infiltrates, we might not find anything in the respiratory system on examination. Few creps might be there. However, if the patient has a large cavity or a large consolidation, we can hear conducted sounds, which we call as bronchial breath sounds over the cavity itself. So very few findings that we might find. After we have completed our examination, of course, we go to our diagnosis. So mainstay of our diagnosis is sputum microscopy. This is the mainstay of diagnosis of tuberculosis. So every patient who is a case of presumptive pulmonary TB and who is producing sputum needs to undergo a sputum direct microscopy or a sputum smear examination. So what do we do in direct microscopy? Anyone? Can anyone answer me? क्या करते हैं हम डायरेक्ट माइक्रोस्कोपी में? Aarti Chauhan, roll number 1, can you answer me? Ashi Tyagi. Are you present or absent? At least unmute yourself. If you don't know the answer, say we don't know. There's no harm, but at least unmute yourself so I know that you're present. Okay, I don't know if these people are there. Astha, are you present? Astha Kesri.
Yes.
Okay, Astha, do you have any idea what do we do in sputum smear examination?
Ma'am, in direct microscopy, we don't do, we do not modify it any other way, like we do not skew it by any laboratory procedures, but we directly view it under the microscope. So it is
मतलब
more
स्पूटम
crude
पेशेंट
method.
ने दे दिया हमें और हमने उसको बस स्मेयर मतलब उसका स्मेयर बना के देख लिया, that's it. Or do we do
Ma'am, I'm
something
not very
else?
sure. Ma'am, I'm not very sure, but
Okay, you're not very
that much.
sure. Anyone else? Yeah, who's raising? Alvia. Alvia, yeah. Please, what do you think we do? Please answer.
Acid fast staining.
Yes, yes. So what we do is we do acid fast staining. Okay, or ZN stain, जो हम बोलते हैं Ziehl-Neelsen staining. This is what we do in sputum direct smear. क्योंकि अगर हम वैसे ही sputum को माइक्रोस्कोप के नीचे लगाएंगे तो हमें कुछ नहीं दिखेगा. Okay, we will not see the acid fast bacilli at all. So what we mean by sputum smear or sputum direct microscopy is that we are collecting the sputum sample. We ask the patient to give a spot sample and an early morning sample, and we make a smear and we stain it by Ziehl-Neelsen method, and we demonstrate acid fast bacilli on the smear. Okay, this is smear examination. And after this, what we do is a X-ray chest. Okay, so a chest X-ray would be important in cases where the person is not producing sputum. Okay, and also as an added diagnosis. Then we come to sputum culture. Okay, so now why do we need sputum culture if we've already got a diagnosis on our smear? That is a question. Now we need sputum culture because we want to grow the mycobacterium. And why do we want to grow them? Because we want to know about the sensitivity pattern. We have something called as resistance or drug resistance. So we want to know whether the strain that we have isolated, is it sensitive or is it resistant to our anti-tubercular drugs. So that is why we subject samples to sputum culture. Culture can be either liquid on a liquid medium, which we call as MGIT or Mycobacterium Growth Indicator Tube, MIGIT culture, or solid culture, which is what medium? Anyone? Solid culture कौन से medium पे करते हैं?
LG medium.
Yeah, very good, Jad. On LG medium. So one of these two, but however, I want you to know that nowadays we don't really do solid culture because it is very, very time taking. It takes almost 2 to 3 months to get a report of solid culture. So we prefer liquid culture because it is quicker and you get a result within 3 to 4 weeks. Now, besides culture, we have rapid diagnostic tests. Now, rapid diagnostic tests are genotypic tests. Genotypic meaning we identify the a particular gene, a resistant gene in the strain that we have isolated. And we use this mainly for our two main anti-tubercular drugs, which are isoniazid and rifampicin. So, what are these tests called? You just remember their names, they're sufficient at your level. So we have LPA, which is line probe assay, CBNAT, which is cartridge-based nucleic acid amplification test, and TrueNAT. Of these, LPA diagnoses both isoniazid and rifampicin resistance, and CBNAT and TrueNAT diagnose only rifampicin resistance. So you just need to know that these are the 4 types of testing. There are, of course, other things also that we do like CT scan and all, but you are not needed to know that. These are the basic 4 tests for diagnosis of tuberculosis. So here is a slide of direct smear. What you see typically are these rod-like pink colored acid fast tubercular bacilli against a blue background. Okay, so this is our ZN stain under direct microscopy. Now this next slide here is of an X-ray chest of an infected person. On the left side here, you can see there is a consolidation with cavitation. There's a cavity here. You can see this blackish space. This is a cavity in the mid zone of the lung. And here also there is a cavity on the right upper zone of the X-ray. So this is what a X-ray of tuberculosis, pulmonary tuberculosis would look like. And here you see this big machine with multiple slots. This is a machine for liquid culture. So this sample is inoculated in these tubes and multiple, as you see, can be processed at a single time. So this is a midget culture. Now we're done with diagnosis. Before I end, I would just like to speak about differential diagnosis. So differential diagnosis means if it is not tuberculosis, can it be something else with similar symptoms or similar clinical picture? So yes, there are other diagnoses which we must keep in mind. Most important is other types of infection, like a simple bacterial infection, a lung abscess, or a fungal infection. These might also present like tuberculosis. Then cancer or carcinoma of the lung can also have a similar presentation, you know, like weight loss and cough and hemoptysis. So it can be a similar picture. Then bronchiectasis, which is abnormal dilatation of the bronchi, can also present with large, with coughing and large amounts of sputum production. Okay, side by side sarcoidosis. Sarcoidosis is another granulomatous disease like tuberculosis. Then pneumoconiosis, which are occupational lung diseases like coal workers disease, asbestosis, and some other systemic diseases like cardiovascular disease, hypothyroidism, diabetes mellitus may also present clinically like tuberculosis. So while we are making a diagnosis, we need to also keep these other possibilities in mind. And slide for today is on end TB strategy. Before I discuss this, are there any other questions? Please ask me if there is anything. Otherwise, I go on to the last slide. Any doubts about basic tuberculosis? You know, what it appears like, how do we diagnose it, or anything? I mean, from the clinical part, any doubts? Of course, your microbiology and pathology you will cover subsequently in your curriculum. Any doubts? Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. I just wanted to ask that when a patient is suspected of TB, so
Yes.
which test do we order immediately? Like, do we send them for LPA, TrueNat, CBNat, or do we go for direct microscopy, something? Like,
When you
which is
are suspecting tuberculosis.
yes, ma'am.
Okay, what do you think?
We'll take the two sputum samples, like the on spot
Yeah.
and the early morning, but the culture versus the rapid diagnostic test, which one do you prefer in clinics?
Okay, neither. Because when we are suspecting tuberculosis on the first instance, the first thing we would want is a smear microscopy, because until then the patient is only a suspect of tuberculosis. So before we go on to culture and genotyping or detecting resistance, we first need to confirm na ki TB hai bhi ki nahi. So
Okay.
to confirm tuberculosis, we need to demonstrate acid-fast bacilli, and we can only demonstrate it on smear microscopy. So the test for confirmation or diagnosis of TB is smear microscopy, and that's it.
All right, ma'am. And once it's confirmed,
Once we have confirmed that the patient has tuberculosis, then we would like to get a genotypic test like LPA or CBNat to see whether the strain that we have isolated is sensitive to our first line drugs or not. So then we advise a CBNat or a LPA.
okay.
Culture is what comes subsequently, and that you'll learn when you have your theory lectures, we'll have this whole long flow chart of how in what sequence do we do these tests. But for now, at your level, I think what you need to know is what are the basic tests that we do, what is the first confirmatory test that we need, and of course a little bit about drug resistance. So I think I have told you that.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Any other queries? Okay. So let's go to NTB.
Dr. Sharada?
Yeah. Yeah. Who's this? Yes.
This is Dr. Jenna from pathology. I just wanted to understand that when we
Yes,
give a report of suppose you're suspecting TB and you've sent us for an FNA and we have got
Sorry, madam, I didn't get you. We are suspecting
a patient of TB, okay, and hasn't been proven yet.
Diagnosed case of TB.
No. You're just suspecting.
Okay.
And you sent for sampling, suppose. And so if we're talking about cervical lymphadenopathy.
Okay.
Okay, and a lymph node aspirate is done, and we give, say we are writing something like we have a granulomatous inflammation, we are getting granulomas with caseous necrosis, but stain for AFB is negative.
Negative.
Now, so what do you label such patients as? Do you proceed with treating?
If the clinical picture is suggestive of tuberculosis, like if cervical lymph node, the patient also, if it's a young patient, if the patient is also complaining of some fever, some anorexia, some constitutional symptoms. So we have a clinical picture already. And as you said, we have aspirated the lymph node and we find granulomatous caseating necrosis. Then we also sometimes get a Montu test done to further support. But even without a Montu, this is sufficient enough for us to start the patient on tuberculosis. Yes. So what I doubt is when it is non-caseating, when we think it could be sarcoidosis. But if you say caseating, then we would go ahead and start.
So if it is non-caseating, we are only getting epithelioid cell granulomas in a reactive background. Then many times we do sign out reports of the kind where getting just granulomas in a reactive background, AFB hasn't come positive.
What then we also work up for sarcoidosis.
Okay.
Yeah, but once you say that AFB are seen, then we take your word for it and we start it.
Of course, that I understand. But so actually there are many times that the AFB doesn't come positive, yet the picture looks very much like a tubercular patient and you have the constitutional symptoms. I just wanted to know that when I sign out such a report, will the patient be started on 83 or is it a rule that you actually...
picture we take into consideration before we start. We rely on your reports also.
That's very reassuring. Now, another thing I wanted to ask was, so do you routinely do TB-PCR for all patients? Like the ones which we have said AFB is not coming. I mean, we've put up a stain and it looks like a TB granulomatous inflammation, but the AFB didn't come because sometimes what happens, these patients have gone to some coags. They started probably a second line treatment with AZI or something and those bacilli.
Ma'am, under program conditions, ideally all these cases should be put up for a CBNAT. But how many of us are actually able to do it and, again, aspirate and send the sample is a big question mark. Yeah. Ideally, the first time we aspirate, we should take 2 samples.
True. But then anyway, thanks a lot, Dr. Sharon. Just wanted to understand this part. कि हम यहाँ sign करते हैं उधर क्या होता है patient के साथ.
Bilkul, thank you so much. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So now we come to our last slide, which is on end TB strategy. So this is something that all of us should know because end TB strategy is this huge WHO initiative which is going on all over the world. So what WHO has said is that by the year 2035, we should end TB from this world. So with the burden we are talking about nowadays, it's really a question mark. Will we be able to do it? But, we must know what are the goals of this end TB strategy. So achieve these targets, we have certain targets that we want to achieve. There are certain goals that we have identified. So these are called SDGs, or Sustainable Development Goals. And according to this NTB strategy, by the year 2030, which is, 2021 is almost gone. So roughly about 8 years from now, we should have attained these targets. Now, what are these targets? There are 3 targets that we need to achieve to end tuberculosis completely. So the first target is reduction in number of TB deaths. The second target is reduction in TB incidence rate. Okay, incidence is the number of new cases of tuberculosis. And third is reduction in TB affected families facing catastrophic costs due to TB. So basically the cost factor, or the financial impact of tuberculosis. So the first 2 criteria that we have are compared with 2015 values that we have for TB deaths and TB incidence rate. So compared to this 2015 rates, by 2030, we should have a 90% reduction in number of TB deaths and an 80% reduction in TB incidence rate. So this is what we hope to achieve by 2030. And there should be 0% families who are facing huge costs due to tuberculosis. So this is what our End TB strategy states. And interestingly, our Prime Minister has, committed to achieving these SDGs 5 years ahead of target, which is by 2025. So which means we have about 3 years to achieve these targets that are mentioned here. So it's a good thing to know and remember if possible. With this, I will end today's class. Thank you. Any queries, anyone, before I end the class? Any queries, any feedback? Too much information, too less information, too difficult to understand? Any feedback is welcome. Yes.
Ma'am, can you brief us about the respiratory examination once again?
About respiratory system examination?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so respiratory system examination, you would know there are 4 parts. Okay, so we have inspection, palpation, percussion, and auscultation. So, as I told you in my slide, we don't expect to find any very specific or very drastic findings in a tuberculosis patient on examination. So inspection, you might practically not see anything unless it's a long-standing disease. There is extensive fibrosis. You might see volume loss on one side of the chest. Volume loss meaning asymmetry in the chest wall. One side would appear a little contracted compared to the other side. Likewise, on palpation, same thing. When you palpate, you might find a little decreased movements on that side if that side is extensively fibrosed. Otherwise, more or less, movements are equal on both sides during palpation. Okay. Then coming to percussion, if it's an area of large consolidation, if it's a cavity, then you might percuss a different note. Otherwise, on percussion also, you will not find any specific findings. If it's a large cavity, again, on auscultation, you might hear bronchial breath sounds. There are a type of conducted breath sounds that you hear. I can't explain to you in detail now. During your clinical classes, maybe we will explain to you the mechanism of production of bronchial breath sounds and how it sounds. But for now, that's all you need to remember. And of course, if there is extensive fibrosis, you might hear creps when you auscultate, creps or crackles in the affected areas. So yeah, that's pretty much what you would find in the respiratory system. Any other question?
Ma'am, if the sputum smear is positive for acid fast bacilli, but
Mhm.
the bacteria is some other atypical mycobacteria, so then we go for CBNAT directly. How to confirm that?
If it is some other mycobacteria like
atypical
atypical mycobacteria, so then so then what we would do is we would go for a culture and a CBNAT, and there they would identify the strain. It would say MTB detected. So that would, if it says MTB detected, that means it is tuberculosis and not atypical. So a genotypic test or a culture would help us differentiate between atypical mycobacteria.
Ma'am, how to confirm from the smear, sputum
You
smear
cannot
that
confirm from a smear. The smear will not confirm if it is atypical, but it is a confirmatory test for tuberculosis. So don't confuse the two.
Ma'am, can you please explain?
Sorry. See, if you are suspecting tuberculosis and you want to confirm the patient does have tuberculosis, your confirmatory test is a smear examination. Okay, once you demonstrate acid fast bacilli, then you can label the patient has tuberculosis, and then subsequently you send your sputum for genotypic identification so that you know the resistance pattern. But it is also possible that the patient has atypical mycobacterium, but I would like you to know that this proportion of atypical mycobacterium is very, very, very low. Maybe 0.1% of cases would be atypical. So it is very rare that you have a false diagnosis. But even if it is, when you are subjecting the patient to a genotypic test or a culture, you get the species identification.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Any other question? Any feedback, anyone, for the subsequent classes? I would like you to say something. No, nothing. Okay. Okay, then I think we'll end today's class. Thank you so much, everyone, for being such patient and interactive listeners. And see you all again soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you.